Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Up and Up. I'm Jodi Newell with Real Progress in Action. The pandemic has created a tsunami of problems that were 100% predictable. This includes something as basic as how to keep a roof over your head. Because if people can't work, they can't pay rent. It's as simple as that. But if you want to know how to fight for tenants' rights in your community, you'll be knocked out by today's guest, Jenay Manley of KC Tenants in Kansas City, Missouri. Hi, Jenay. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, I think to start off, I'd really like to hear a little bit about you and kind of what brought you into activism. What was it that really inspired you and made you want to get involved?
So like me actively being involved or me like following work?
Well, are you an employee or a volunteer?
So I just started a fellowship actually at the beginning of the month.
Oh,
So it's neither, but kind of in between. I got involved with KC Tenants, and it was the first time that like I actually organized, like did something other than just like scream in the void of Facebook. And I did that. It started a year ago, about 2 weeks in a year now. I saw my friend Maya speaking at a sunrise movement under one of their actions under KC Tenants. And she was speaking on like gentrification and how she was evicted from her home and discrimination and all these intersectionalities. And in July of 2019, I had gone back to my abusive ex. I'd left him like 4 years before in order and like was gone for 4 years. He came back into my life trying to like build a relationship with his kids and like get back together. And we were almost homeless. Our rent had changed $600 within 30 days. And they told me 7 days after rent was due. So I had like nothing. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, I don't know how to do this. And he was like, well, if you want to give us another chance, then I can move in and pay half the rent. So I chose to do that. But that was in July, and it was about September when I saw Maya, and I knew that relationship, while it was fine for the moment, I knew the pattern that I had lived for 5 years with him and knew that it would get toxic again. So I messaged her and I asked her what she was doing and how she was doing it. And we met at a Waffle House, and she told me about the Tenant Bill of Rights and KC Tenants, and invited me to a strategy team meeting that night. And I went and realized that I can't give my kids wealth and probably won't be able to give them a college education, but I can give them the tools of like people power. And like, that's all I have. So we haven't left. And I've been like a leader with KC Tenant since and started my fellowship 2 weeks ago, or October 5th.
That's beautiful. Anyway, I'm going to remember that for a long time because it brings tears to my eyes. I mean, yeah, that's what I can give them is people power. I think that's absolutely amazing. Wow. So tell me about KC Tenants. I mean, first of all, I guess we could start with, what is the Tenants Bill of Rights?
So the Tenant Bill of Rights is a document that guarantees certain rights to tenants. It birthed the Office of the Tenant Advocate, which is like a government-run program or office that when tenants have issues in their housing, they theoretically could be able to file a complaint with the Office of the Tenant Advocate, and that person would investigate it and advocate for tenants and hold landlords accountable. And the rights of the tenants are in this Bill of Rights, which is like beautiful. And for a long time, people were like, well, tenants already have rights. Yes, but nobody knows where to get their rights. Like there are way too many laws on the book. So this is like a Bill of Rights. Here they are right here, and knowledge is power, and it gets to be yours. Mm-hmm. So it's a beautiful thing. The Office of the Tenant Advocate should be a beautiful thing, and hopefully when we're done fighting, it will be. It unfortunately is underfunded right now, but especially during COVID, I can't help but think how much the Office of the Tenant Advocate could keep tenants in their homes right now, and how illegal evictions are happening because people can't afford to pay their rent and are supposed to be protected by the CDC moratorium and aren't being. And instead, landlords are doing things like cutting off people's lights, putting their stuff outside without a sheriff. And the Office of the Tenant Advocate could fight against that. Sorry, I'm just saying that if we funded it right, like we would have some protection during COVID.
Yeah, absolutely. And which leads me to something that I'd really like to make sure that we emphasize is that this didn't start with COVID. The crisis that we're having right now is absolutely perpetuated. No, that's not the word I'm looking for. It's absolutely exacerbated. That's the word I'm looking for. Exacerbated by the situation that we're in with the pandemic. But this has been, building up for quite a while, where people essentially don't understand their rights. Not only don't know what their rights are, but don't have protection in a legal setting. And so, you need to have someone who can advocate for you in that situation. So tell me a little bit about, what I'd like to do is kind of situate the pandemic situation within the broader scope of what has actually been happening with tenants, and what has been happening as far as, like you were talking about before, how your rent went up by $600 in a month, and you were told, after the due date. I mean, that's unbelievable to think that that could possibly happen. What is it that's allowing people to fall through the cracks? Why are we in this? That's a big question. But from how you see it, how do we kind of allow this to happen, that our rights have been eroded so much, or did we never have them in the first place and we just didn't understand?
Well, I agree that this happened before COVID. In fact, again, the Office of the Tenant Advocate was built to advocate for tenants before COVID was even here. We have been having that conversation since before we even knew COVID was a thing. And I think it would help tenants during COVID-19, but it needed to be here before COVID. It needed to be here before June, when it was supposed to be implemented. It should have been here forever ago. I think that one of the things that the Tenant Bill of Rights we were fighting for is right to counsel. And unfortunately, we didn't get that piece passed. And I really think that the reason that tenants' rights have been eroded, or were never there, is because we haven't had right to counsel. Property is the way we build wealth. You can get a loan on your house to be able to get a lawyer. But if you don't have a home, if you don't have wealth, you can't afford a lawyer. My situation was actually the housing authority. It wasn't a landlord. The housing authority raised my rent by $600. Yes, 7 days after rent was due, they sent a letter to the property manager saying that they weren't going to pay $300 that they had agreed to pay. And then I didn't pay my utilities to be able to come up with that money for my rent, because now I had late fees and rent due, because they told me 7 days after rent was due. So I didn't pay my utilities, and instead I paid my rent. And then I sent my kids to Florida with my family so I could work 70 hours in 1 week to come up with the money that I didn't pay on my utilities. And that week was July 26th of last year. And I personally got a letter, not my property manager this time. I got a letter saying starting in August, they would only be paying $80 of my rent. So they went from paying about $680 to $80. So now I had 4 days till rent was due again. And that month it would be $600 more than I'd ever even imagined. And so I told the housing authority that I went and looked at the federal guidelines for the housing authority, and they have to give you 30 days notice before they change your rent. So technically, since they didn't tell me till July 7th, they couldn't have changed my rent till September 1st. Right. And I showed them my paperwork, and their response was, well, you can get a lawyer, or you can talk to city council. Now, what city council could do for me, I don't know. No. What can they do? I mean, I guess we could file to revoke the licenses of, I don't know. Well, right to counsel would have gotten me what I needed, and I wouldn't have had to go back to an abusive relationship that I knew at that time I was going back to in order to pay my rent, despite the fact that I would be abused. I knew that going in, but it was my only option. So when we talk about COVID-19 and how that affects people, people are going into situations not because they want to, but they have no choice. And that's been happening since before. I was watching a woman's child, her third grader, for before and after school care, because she told me that she went back to her youngest child's father to be able to get before and after school care for her child, because she couldn't afford rent and child care. And she was being abused in that relationship. So while I was with my abuser, I was watching her children so she didn't have to be with her abuser, because she had to choose between child care and rent. So COVID-19, yes, it's pulling all of us down, but nobody's been good. We haven't been good. We've been living in toxic places. We've been living in unhealthy homes. I've seen roofs fall, just falling in, and there is no rights. We can make requests with healthy homes, but what does that do? Without right to counsel, it does, our rights don't matter. Without the Office of the Tenant Advocate, our rights don't matter. That's why we built the Office of the Tenant Advocate, because there is no power for the poor except people power. So that's pre-COVID.
Yep. And I mean, I guess we've seen in a variety of different ways, and especially when you talk about domestic abuse. I mean, it's so many different things that it kind of ripples out and affects all these different things that are already pre-existing in our society. But it's just making these things so much worse. And you'd think that at least it would be so visible to people that they would be spurred to action, that they would want to do something to address it.
I mean, I think that's what COVID is doing, though. I think that's what's making it visible. I think that people thought it was invisible before. People were ashamed. People felt like it was their fault. But COVID shows us that this is not our fault. We should have protections. Y'all, you should have protections. Y'all, anyone who sees this should have protections. And it's not your fault. And COVID-19 showed the world that. But just in case you forgot, it's not your fault.
It's amazing to me too, because you say that it's a housing authority. I mean, that's not even private landlord. It's one thing, you would, I don't know, you would think that they would do better, because then they are bound by these regulations. They bound by law.
Well, not if you don't have a lawyer to fight it.
Yep, absolutely. So tell me about, so one thing, if we talk about visibility, right? So if we're talking about the visibility of this problem and trying to draw attention to it, I do know that there are a few different ways. And one of the ways that I was kind of, my attention was drawn to. Now, mind you, I volunteer with another fellow organization that operates in partnership or whatever with a member organization of People's Action. And so I was already familiar with you guys anyway. But somebody sent me a video that I hadn't even seen, even though I'm involved. And that was of an action that I think this was October 16th. Am I wrong? Might be off by a day or two. It's not. It's not that big of a deal. But it was just a couple of weeks ago, and this is you guys actually going. Well, you know what? I don't even want to tell the story. You tell me the story, please. Tell me all about this action that you did. I want to know every little thing about it.
First, I got to take you back first.
Okay.
July 31st, we had a similar action. So we decided our moratorium in Kansas City was canceled at the beginning of June. It was no more. Nobody was protected. And we were struggling, and people were stressed, and we were scared. And we had called on Judge Byrne to cancel or to end evictions and to put the moratorium back in place, and he wouldn't listen. So 2 months later, we were like, what do we do? How do we solve this? So we decided it was time for us to shut shit down. Am I allowed to cuss?
Do it up.
Okay. Well, we decided it was time to shut shit down. Mm-hmm. So we decided that we were going to have a team of people who threw a rally in front of the courthouse. We were going to have a team of people go into the courthouse and disrupt in there, and then a team on the phone, because we are also having call-in evictions happening. People are yeah, you heard me.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Let's just for a quick second. I don't want to throw you off, but what is a phone-in, a call-in? What?
Well, COVID-19 gets people sick, so if you don't want to get sick, you can call in and try to be evicted there. So you're literally listening to babies in the background, children running in the background, to phone calls of people being told to get out of their homes because they can't wait until people can safely enter a courthouse and actually deal with due process. Imagine trying to get evidence to the courthouse over the phone. Imagine trying to see the evidence your landlord is using to evict you when you're on the phone. How does that work? Yeah. So we had to shut down not only in-person evictions, because those are happening also, but the on-the-phone evictions. So we had a crew of people who called in to the eviction conference calls and shut it down. I have the script somewhere, but we had this really deep script that names that tenants, this is not your fault. You deserve to have a home during COVID-19. Judge Byrne, you are responsible for this. You are being complacent in an act of violence. And it's so beautiful. I'm going to get you a copy of that script.
Yes, please. I want to, hopefully we can put it in here. I'd love to have that.
But it literally would cycle through. So one person would do the script and then they'd stop, and then another person would do the script and then they'd stop, and another. And so the judges, no one could get in to speak. And you could hear tenants in the background saying, yeah, they're right, because they know it's not their fault. This is not on you. And they try to make it feel like this is our fault, but it's not. It's really not. And the most beautiful part about it is that you hear it first you're like, what is this? Second time you're like, okay, kind of. And third time, like the third time I heard it, like I'm not the person being evicted and I want to name that. But like I remembered that like I'm not alone in this shit. Like tenants in the room, this isn't your fault. You deserve to have a home. You deserve safe housing during this pandemic. KC Tenants has your back. All of that. Judge Byrne, you are being complacent. You could stop eviction. All of that. Yes. So it's beautiful. We used the same script inside and shut down the courts inside. And this was in July. And disrupted until 2 of us were arrested. And then we had a rally outside and we had a banner drop off of the side of the building. So we had like 4 big moving parts and we shut down the courts. We shut it down. It was beautiful. So evictions were still happening. And obviously like they weren't taking us seriously.
Was there a response? I mean, was there like an official response or did people reach out to KC Tenants or?
We had tenants reach out. There was definitely like a lot of people who supported it. And we also there was a public letter from the circuit court and they said they got through their evictions. How they did that, it's not possible unless they like violated someone's rights because literally we were talking nonstop. So
what do you mean they got through their evictions?
They said they got through their eviction hearings on the phone, even though we were on all the calls talking over them. So
interesting. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we did it again in October. It had been months. Still nothing changed. Still evictions happening. The CDC moratorium is now in place. Jackson County is violating the CDC moratorium and allowing landlords to file for evictions, even though like it's supposed to be halted after you file the declaration. They can send in evidence. Like what? No. So we decided it was like we had to shut it down. Like we can't continue to allow people to be evicted from their homes. This is ridiculous. There's a CDC moratorium. So we had another action, and this time we had an outside crew, which is probably the video you're talking about. And we rushed up to the doors and chained them shut, and then chained ourselves to the doors through a rally for an hour and a half.
KC Tenants is protesting ongoing eviction proceedings. Organizers say landlords are using unlawful detainer filings to get around the federal eviction moratorium. We counted more than 40 so far in Jackson County this month. And KC Tenants says they've noticed a spike since the CDC rule in September.
One of the biggest things that I've been worried about in the weeks since then has been that landlords would actually start to find other ways to evict their tenants besides for the rent.
I just really think it's unfair.
Tyler is a Kansas City firefighter protecting the very neighborhood where he lives and says they want to stay.
We really like this neighborhood. You know, I work right down the street. Daycare is close. She feels safe. My family feels safe.
Home sweet home, or so they thought.
It keeps me up at night. I can't sleep.
This month, Tyler Jones, fiancée Jasmine, and little Kennedy were abruptly told to leave their duplex of 4 years.
She came up and said, I'm giving you guys 3 days to be out.
It followed an incident at the Courthouse Apartments leasing office in South Kansas City. Jones says he'd gone in to ask a property manager about a late fee.
She pushed me out the door and she kept pushing me, and I said, hey, you don't have to put your hands on me.
Management, he says, claimed he'd gotten angry.
However, I never made any threatening gestures, never disrespected anyone.
But there was a police report, and an email told them to move out, saying in court an unlawful detainer would be filed, a kind of eviction proceeding.
They're not here because they care about the community. Let's just be honest, right? They're here as an investment strategy.
She's talking about Landmark Realty, the California company which our investigation found bought the Courthouse Apartments earlier this year. But they're not new to town.
They're definitely, I would say, one of the top 5 slumlords on our radar.
We had 50 people from 50 different places around the country call in and do our online actions because, again, they're over the phone. Like, anyone can call into these. And because, like, what is anyway, so we had people from 50 different places across the country call in to shut down the courts, and they did our conferences so our people could do the rally outside, and it was like a beautiful, like almost a national action because there were people from outside of Kansas City throwing down in solidarity, like actually shutting it down. Yeah. So on the outside we had our rally, we did our thing. and then they shut down the entire eviction process. We have tenants that have told us that their evictions are moved to January. We have some that are moved to the middle of November. We've had, it's beautiful.
Oh,
And again, Jackson County said that they got through their dockets. How? I don't know, unless they were not actually giving people their day in court.
yeah. Well, I'm wondering if you'll end up hearing from some of those people.
We have heard from a few. We actually had one of the tenants on our base call this next Saturday.
Ooh, okay. Just to move on to another thing real quick, because I love, is it Slumlord Saturdays? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
And did this start with the pandemic, or was this before that?
This actually just started 2 weeks ago.
Oh,
We
okay.
started Slumlord Saturdays, and our first Slumlord of the week was Millennial Properties. And I lived in them when I was 15, and they got split up. And then we had Landmark Realty. Never lived there, but I know some people who have, and they got to go too.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So what exactly qualifies someone to be highlighted for Slumlord Saturdays?
The last two people who were Slumlord Saturday highlights were highlighted. They are the top three, part of the top three evictors in Kansas City right now. All of them have had tenants who have called into our hotline and filed complaints on them. So we have a hotline that tenants across Kansas City can call into and just like fill out an incident report, let us know about illegal evictions, landlords violating rights. And we use that information plus like how many people are being evicted by this landlord, what have they been highlighted for before, are their tenants complaining about like bad housing, like leaks and refusal to do repairs. So all of those things are taken into consideration before we do them, and we just highlight the ones that we know
Right.
should be shut down.
So as you're gathering information about from people who are calling in, right? What are the things that I find in other situations? And tell me if it's the same, if it holds true with this. And a lot of times when we're trying to aggregate statistics on certain things, police brutality for one thing. And, there are certain situations that we don't seem to get a whole lot of information that is actually like kept in the categories that we need it federally or through the state, you know what I mean? And so what I'm wondering is, as you're getting this information straight from the tenants, right, are you also factoring in information that's aggregated by, say, the state of Missouri or the city of Kansas City, or is that information provided, like how many evictions there are and kind of any type of breakdown of the circumstances? I may be off base. I'm just curious if that's a thing and if they provide that.
No, we don't have any assistance from the government, from the city, from anything. Like, it is just our hotline trying to keep track of who is a big evictor, who is treating their tenants bad, and like collect information, collect stories, like show up for tenants how we can. One thing I have been doing is like picking out a few hotline calls and just like doing a little bit research, like who is their landlord, how many evictions have they done this year, how many healthy homes violations have they had this year, like, and that's just mainly me being curious and doing research on my not just me, because there are other people who are doing it, but like people are just doing research and trying to get a bigger picture on our own. But the city hasn't provided us with anything. The city hasn't even provided the Office of the Tenant Advocate with enough advocates. They're not going to, like, what are they going to do for us? They have nothing. They're not doing anything. Yeah.
Another thing I'd like to really kind of hone in on is the difference between, the difference between the help that's been provided. And so I guess this is specifically in the time of the pandemic, right? Since, was it March? I don't know. When did Missouri, or did they fully shut down?
Missouri didn't actually, I don't know what you would define as shut down. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, it varies. But I just mean, were people expected to stay at home is what I'm saying. Like, were non-essential workers expected to be home?
No, not really.
Okay. All right. Yeah, it's different in different states, and that, even that, saying that lockdown is or shutdown or whatever is misinterpreted by, it's interpreted differently by different people, not misinterpreted, but differently. So I'm curious, especially with, kind of given that situation, what kind of help was provided for tenants I think we know, of course, federally there was the moratorium put on, but this was just, public housing. Am I right? Like it didn't have anything to do with private landlords and things.
Right. So in Kansas City, Jackson County specifically, which is Judge Byrne, had an eviction moratorium like through and through, like they were doing no eviction until June, the 1st of June. Now, I don't live in Jackson County. I live in Clay County. So we have like 3 counties that make up our city.
Mm-hmm.
So my county did nothing. There were no protections for tenants like me. Like I was working 46 hours a week on overnight and couldn't stop. And Jackson County had the eviction moratorium, but that doesn't mean illegal evictions weren't happening. We were getting calls at the beginning of the pandemic, and that it all ended in June, and they haven't done anything since.
Really sad. And especially when you talk about a moratorium is just hitting pause. The money's still racking up. The bills are still racking up. You're still going to have to pay them afterwards. You're not going to have any more money than you did. I mean, the whole point.
Say it, cancel rent, say it.
Yep. Well, one of the things
means nothing without canceling rent. Yep. It's just a flood of evictions waiting to happen.
Absolutely. And one of the things we really focus on with Real Progressives and Real Progress in Action as well is, the fact that the government has the money to do this. The money can be provided, right? As long as we have the resources, we can provide the money. That's not the problem with the federal government. And so when we talk about kind of how this breaks down and who's footing the bill and who's really making the rules that go along with it, and then footing the bill that kind of backs it up or whatever, it really, I would think that it needs to be the federal government. You know what I mean? The state government is restricted. The local, your city government is budget is restricted. The federal budget is not restricted. It's only restricted by by inflation, essentially. So, so it's interesting to see that even the federal government, when they have a chance, what are they doing? A moratorium, and it doesn't even affect everyone. So the people who really can help in this situation have really dropped the ball. And I think we all kind of know that on many levels. But this is definitely, this is someone's home. What do you have? Like, how civilized are you as a society if you can't provide for someone's, to have a roof over their head? You can't make sure that everyone has a roof over their head. One of the things I know, with People's Action that's in our People's Platform is a homes guarantee. I'm curious how familiar you are with that, and what if you could tell us a little bit of the breakdown about what does that mean to say that we have a homes guarantee?
So I read up on the homes guarantee like a year and a half ago, and that was the last time I read it. But I can tell you what a homes guarantee means to me.
Yeah.
Okay. So to me, a homes guarantee means that I don't have to choose between taking care of my children and playing outside. That I don't have to sacrifice the time that I would be playing kickball to go donate plasma to make the rent. It looks like being able to bake cookies because I'm not working 46 hours plus plasma. Like having the energy to do that. It's sitting at home and watching a movie and not feeling guilty for the fact that I could find some other way to help us survive. A homes guarantee is stability so that I can fight for Black injustices and not have to worry about if I'm sacrificing rent. Mm-hmm. So it is the beginning of all of my organizing, which I would argue might be the reason why they don't want to pass it. Because if we were all had stable housing, we could fight for the other things that we need in life.
That's right. Well, I don't know. I appreciate what you do so much. And I have a lot of people who come on here who I try to bring on people who are activists who don't necessarily get a lot of mainstream attention and things like that. And what that gives me the opportunity to do is connect with people who are just like me in a different community and going through similar situations, things like that. And I just, I'm just thinking because I appreciate what I do right now, because I get to meet you and I get to talk to you and I get to be inspired by you because you inspire me. So thank you. I'm sorry, I'm getting mushy, but you made me want to cry. Okay. All right. So I'm going to stop being an emotional weirdo right now. All right. But anyway, we close it out every time We close it out every time by talking to people about what they can do in their own community, what they can do if they're in the area, how can they help with KC Tenants. If they are a tenant and they need to contact you, how can they reach you? And, you know, what can people do, even if they're not local, what can they do to support people in their area? Or if they need help in their own area, how can they organize with other people? How can they kind of replicate what you guys are doing there?
So first and foremost, if you are a tenant and you are being treated wrong, if you are being illegally evicted, if your landlord is definitely abusing their power, call our hotline. The people closest to the problem are closest to the solutions, and you have the solutions. I know I have my solutions, but they mean nothing if they're just mine. So call the hotline and help us organize a KC Tenants. And if you're not in Kansas City, find someone to organize with. Look, I mean, I don't know, message People's Action and ask them who's organizing housing. Talk to Homes Guarantee, ask them what organizations are doing it. Because like I said earlier, I don't think that we can fight for anything else without first having stable housing. If you are in Kansas City and you want to get involved, go to KC Tenants' Facebook page, go fill out the incident report. If you are away from Kansas City and you live somewhere where there are not people organizing for housing, start it. KC Tenants has a tenant union zine, and it is beautiful and free and online. And start a tenant union in your building, even if you don't have an organization. Organize your building, fight your landlord, hold them accountable. Yeah, and that goes everywhere, across the country. Let's build some shit. You want to cancel rent? I want to cancel rent. We want to cancel rent. We gotta call it out. Bring it to the Senate. All of it. Drop it. Tenant unions everywhere.
This is Lily, and I am Jenay, and we are leaders with KC Tenants. This week, I slept for the first time in months. Like, really slept, not a nap. I painted old moving boxes with my kids, Lily and Avery, and we had an epic water balloon fight with my niece and nephew. These are some of the first moments of joy we've had in a long time. This week was also one of many rock bottoms for us. Wednesday was July 1st, and rent was due again. And after months of being an essential worker that put their health at risk, I still didn't have what I needed to cover my bills. Like millions of people across this country, with every passing month, my family is one step closer to eviction, a traumatic event that would change our lives forever. Let's be clear about something. My rock bottom and the rock bottom for so many other people, it didn't just happen. This is by design. Black and Native people know this horror story better than anyone else. America is founded on an evil strand of racial capitalism that is designed to exploit us. To extract from our communities, to make a profit off our bodies, and then to discard them as if we are no longer useful. And for what? To make money for the rich, the corporations, the white supremacist descendants of those who built this country on stolen land and labor? The ultimate trap of white supremacist racial capitalism is that they try to kill our joy and stifle our imagination. We are forced to work day in and day out for a white man's profit. We are forced to take our wages earned through our labor and hand them over to our landlords for the white man's profit. We are forced to watch our brothers, sisters, siblings, and babies get killed and then pretend we're all right. We have every right to be angry, You have every right to be angry, and I have every right to be angry. But shit, y'all, we can't make it without some joy. And they stay winning if we lose our imagination. So today, I'm gonna tell you about my dreams for a better world. When I dream that when, not if, but when, we defund the police, we can invest in housing for our people. We can end homelessness. We can ensure that every person has a safe, healthy place to live. We can guarantee that parents don't have to choose between food and housing, and that domestic violence survivors are forced to stay with their abusers in order to keep a roof over their head. When I dream that when we defund the police, we can invest in universal health care. This would allow us to address underlying health problems that are causing our communities to be the highest impacted by COVID. I dream that when we defund the police, all pregnant black women will have access to resources like doulas to prevent black women from dying of birth. I dream that when we defund the police, we can invest in public education that doesn't depend on property taxes and other racist institutions to keep my babies from succeeding. I dream that when we defund and abolish the police, we can invest in transformative justice and stop the government and police from profiting off prisoners while destroying our communities and families. And when I dream that when we defund the police, we can invest in a green future. We can take care of the land. We can live in a world that is healthy and beautiful and free of toxins and man-made disasters. The police do not work for us. The police state is an invention of the white ruling class used to protect their property, period. On a good day, when the police respond to our calls, they take our statements, but it's unlikely they'll follow up. No. On our worst days, we are burying our babies. The police do not work for us. And when we live in a city where the police get $273 million of our money to criminalize us in our homes, on our streets, and everywhere in between, we have to wonder why. Who do the people who make our city's budget work for? The budget shows us that our city's priorities. And today, July 4th, it looks like Kansas City would rather house us in their fucking jails. Our city's budget doesn't reflect that they give a damn about a black woman, a black man, a black person, a black kid, a black life, or a black future. Every day, I wake up with a little dread. I've been told it's depression, but I'm starting to think it's really just a reflection on how this country treats its most vulnerable people. I am naturally full of smiles and bad dance moves and laughs to tears, but this world just keeps hitting us hard. Don't give up. And our government just keeps telling us to get up. Honestly, my body is tired. I'm tired. Me too. And my brain is tired. Our bodies and our brains are tired. I want to live in a better world. I want to live in a better world. Defund the police.
Thanks again, and thanks to all of you for watching the Up and Up. Please like and follow Real Progressives and Real Progress in Action on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. You'll find all the links below. And please consider becoming a donor at patreon.com/realprogressives. This is Jodi Newell signing off.